Hello YouTube, this is Morgan Airspeed Prime here with my next Avatar video. This is going to be my lore discussion on the new Avatar Legends RPG adventure, Storm Over Linsho. So where did this one come from? This comes from the new quick start guide that was released to basically coincide with the free RPG adventure Rebels and Refugees. At the start of that, they basically linked you to this quick start guide as a way to give you the rules, and it was a bit of a surprise that this quick start guide also included an adventure of its own. So they haven't really promoted this one anywhere, Magpie, from what I can see. Though I get the idea that with this one, it's a little bit more straightforward of a story. I don't think this is the most interesting thing that we've ever seen, but there's still some stuff to talk about here. So links in the description to Magpie's website as well as DriveThruRPG if you want to download the quick start for free. That includes Storm Over Linsho. That's why I have the document up here, that because it's a completely free and just available to everyone, I will just use the document here to show off what I need to. So here is the basic description of this to get an overview of what's happening here. It's an Aang era adventure, meaning of course that this is post ATLA, so we are post-war here. Basically it is the comic timeline set just after Imbalance, basically. The heroes are sent to the Earth Kingdom town of Linsho to apprehend an arsonist who is rumored to be hiding out somewhere in the village. Normally such a problem would be left to the local authorities, but the arsonist has already escaped capture in neighbouring villages after burning down several warehouses and docks. The companions arrive in Linsho, a former Fire Nation colony, just ahead of a dangerous storm, but the weather is only the start of their problems. They must find the arsonist before the storm gives the criminal a chance to escape, all while navigating a fishing town still embroiled in the after effects of the Harmony Restoration movement. Can the heroes find a way to mend old wounds and capture the dangerous arsonist before he strikes again? So, we're dealing with colonies in the aftermath of the war. So if you've read the Promise, you will be familiar with, them referencing the Harmony Restoration movement. That said, if you have just read the core book, you also probably know about it as well. They do explain it as part of this, just so you have context just in this adventure. But the idea here is that this is a younger colony that hasn't been around anywhere near as long as a Yu Dao or something like that. So this one has mostly been able to just go ahead with the Harmony Restoration movement and kind of, relocate the Fire Nation people, most of them, back to the Fire Nation, return the kind of ownership of this place back to the Earth Kingdom. But the complication here, where most of the plot comes into play, is that it's a fishing village, but the fishery, the business that basically kind of is the main business in this town, is run by a Fire National. Now, it's further complicated a little bit by that, but the idea is that the Earth Kingdom people would like effectively control of this themselves, but the ruling effectively was that the owner was allowed to keep their business, and this has caused a bit of an issue, of course, here. And so the kind of twist in the story is that the owner of this business is the one who has hired the arsonist to kind of help themselves from a business point of view. This is why they highlight the idea neighboring villages have had their warehouses and docks burned down, so that the fishing related stuff in this village becomes more important and more valuable. And it's also meant to help this person with their reputation, as we'll kind of get it explained as we go through this. So, interesting enough, I personally feel Linsho should have been given a little bit more history, just place a little bit more importance here. It has the usual Legends RPG issue of it doesn't tell you exactly where this is on the map, so it is just sort of a place made up, it seems like, for the most part for this, because I don't think they directly confirm that this is this place from this episode or anything like that, and that makes it feel a little bit like, it's kind of almost tougher to even maybe do this story, maybe not knowing some of the deeper history, because it really is just focused on like this fishing business. Fire Nation people, Earth Kingdom people lived here, not even knowing like how far long ago the colony was made. So how many generations do the families go back? It's a little bit tricky, and I think some of that detail would be very helpful to get, but they don't deliver it. So I'm going to jump down to the characters first, because I do feel, in terms of trying to present this as clearly as possible, they almost do it a little bit backwards, though I suppose the idea is that before you start this story, the idea is that you're meant to read the whole thing. But in terms of presenting it here, I'll do characters first. So we have a list of characters here. So we have Leif, who is the town's mayor. We have Raya, the corrupt owner of Blue Skies Fisheries, which is the fishing business I've been talking about. There is a security team as part of this business, and that is the Blue Skies Security. They're earthbenders. We have Chen Lai, who is a morning fisher pushed to the edge. We have Ge, who is the son of Chen Lai, hoping to make it on his own. And these two are part of the Restorationists, a group of fishers who want the Fire Nation locals ousted. Most of them have kind of gone away with the Harmony Restoration movement, but they would like it completely reversed, basically. Yo, a retired Fire Nation firebender general with a grudge. Yiko, the town bully who is becoming a real problem, and these two are part of the Loyalists, a radical group of firebenders and former Fire Nation colonists who feel oppressed. So they're the two kind of groups causing issues in the town, and then you have the owner of the business. Note here that I believe the idea here is that you effectively get the kind of the older character and their child on both sides of things, and one of the big things is that as part of the story, you go with the idea that either Yiko or Ge are the arsonist, depending on what way you want the story to kind of play out. Again, it's an adventure, so there's not really a canonical ending to this as such. It's whatever way you play the story, obviously. So let's get into the characters a little bit. So we have Leif, who is the Linsho mayor, who got the position due to expert knowledge of Earth Kingdom bureaucracy. Born and raised in Linsho, came from a proud line of earthbenders, though she never mastered bending herself. So they seem to only give her these techniques. So this is, I guess, an example of a character which is kind of unique. We don't see this too often, who is an earthbender, I think is what they're telling us here, but has never done any training in that regard. So that's quite interesting, if I'm interpreting that correctly. She understands the strife. A lot of the town comes from Ria's avarice, and she underestimates him as a threat. And it's just the idea that here we have the exhausted leader, and the mayor is the one who brings the heroes in to kind of try and resolve things effectively here. So there's definitely a format for some of these adventures where they do this. It's like, here's two key groups with like, here's the younger members of each group, the older members of each group. Here is the more neutral faction that brings the heroes in, and we kind of go from there. And then in this case, Raya is the kind of main character overall. So this is who we need to focus on, I think, quite a lot, because most of the detail, it feels like, is surrounding this character. So Raya was born to an earthbending father and a Fire Nation colonist mother. While not the only kid in Linsho with that parental combination, he was always a bit too scrawny, a bit too emotional, and a bit too snobbish to really fit in. He was bullied, and this has kind of shaped him into who he is. He's no longer a scrawny child, but he is an ambitious person. Takes out injustices of his youth on anyone who gets in his way, and that's what he's doing with the kind of business dealings these days. He knows hiring an arsonist to torch buildings could hurt people, but he couldn't care less because all that matters is the bottom line, obviously. And yeah, he doesn't believe anything's going to happen to him. It's all about money. So a relatively simplistic kind of villain overall, but definitely the main kind of threat ultimately in all of this. Blue Sky Securities, I don't think there's too much to talk about with just the kind of random groups of fighters necessarily. But that's that. Chen Lai, simple fisherwoman who could earthbend, chose a happy life on the coast fishing with her friends, managed to mostly dodge the horrors of war by just being part of a colony that had, like, I guess, been already taken over at a certain point in the war, but the conditions were not great. There is the hope that things would improve after basically the Harmony Restoration movement, but because it hasn't like fully changed basically, that's become a bit of a problem, obviously. Mainly because it seems like they haven't been able to get to a situation where they can gain control over the fisheries, because that's what they want. The Restorationists want control of the fisheries, you know, that they should belong to the town, not the Fire Nation business kind of person in town. But of course it is complicated because Rhea is kind of mixed heritage, of course. So because they were born to kind of like fire and earthbending parents in this place, is that there's a bit of the kind of Yu Dao kind of situation, Kori Morishita kind of situation going on here, where that's obviously why the agreement was that you're allowed to keep your business because you have part Earth Kingdom kind of citizenship, I guess. So that's the kind of whole idea there. And yeah, her son, Ge, pronunciation, I'm assuming because it's Lao Ge, that it's just Ge. But anyway, Ge grew up with his mother, never knew his father. And there's not too much to this character. I think this is where it kind of begins to fall apart like a little bit. Just trying to kind of find a way for himself overall. He's come back for this festival that's going on, but doesn't really have an intent to kind of stay here. And obviously this is one of the characters who could be the arsonist if you choose to go down the side that it's the restorationist doing the fires and stuff like that. And yeah, the restorationists want to take control of the fisheries and give them to the people of Linsho, and they think they're being exploited by this greedy businessman, of course, and that's they're done playing games here. They've been nice about it, but now they feel something has to be done ultimately. Yo, retired Fire Nation general, first visited the town before the end of the war, immediately took a shine to it, wanted to retire here, but the war ended by the time that this actually happened, and it wasn't the same, of course. And yeah, we just see he found that Aang's defeat of Ozai and Yo's subsequent deportation reawakened a vicious fire within him. He spent too many years on the wrong side of a conflict and can't conceptualize this new world he must share with others. And now he leads the loyalists who are ready to defend their people against Earth Kingdom aggression, such as the conflict over the fisheries, basically. And they do highlight here, Yo would be shocked to learn that Rhea is behind the arsonist attacks. And then there is the idea that Yiko is the other potential arsonist. This is Yo's son, who is the town bully, basically. And it's becoming a major problem. How will this ever be fixed? Basically, something big needs to happen here. And the father views it as like this is the son refusing to kind of grow up effectively. So that's that. And then we have, yeah, the loyalists here. The Earth Kingdom locals want more than their fair share, so they're going for that as the core kind of conflict at play here. Before we get into location stuff, which I think is probably more towards the end, now we can go back up and get into more of the specific details that are going on as you sort of like start the story, which is that we have the idea that the Squid Ink Festival, which is a key part of, you know, the fishing village going on here, this has actually been cancelled It isn't going ahead because of the storm. And this is usually a thing that would calm everyone down because everyone likes it. But it being cancelled for right reasons, there's no kind of conspiracy here. They need to cancel it because of the storm coming. It is accelerating, it is stoking the fuel of the conflict that's actually happening here between the loyalists and the restorationists, and also in a way causing Rhea to feel like he needs to act also. Yeah. And then, we find out here that, yes, the true enemy is Rhea, who has hired the arsonist to destroy his enemies for the sake of wealth and power. The Squid Ink Festival, because the town's main export is squid ink, because it's an art supply and a delicacy, it is a day of eating, drinking, and making merry after a session of hard work. And yeah, this says here, it's a time when people come together to reconcile old grudges and generally put aside differences to celebrate. But people are going to be much more distrustful because it's been called off, basically. And then, here is the Blue Sky Fisheries kind of details that I've already basically kind of told you here. Founded by the Fire Nation, and that's probably what complicates the whole situation here. Now owned by Rhea's blended Fire Nation Earth Kingdom family. Many expected it to be turned over to the local Earth Kingdom citizens, but Rhea managed to retain ownership, and this has divided people, basically. Because it still feels like, I guess, the town is kind of under control of the Fire Nation, because a Fire Nation business is the main thing in the Earth Kingdom town. That's the complexities of it all. The reason why, like, Rhea, despite owning the main business in town, is kind of acting like this is because he is much less wealthy than he pretends to be. Because of competition from elsewhere, the profits aren't as good. And this is why, as we got from the early description there, why Rhea hired an arsonist to destroy competition in neighboring towns to boost profits here, of course. And now the plan is to instruct the arsonist to torch one of basically his own dilapidated buildings to make himself look like a victim in this too, so that no one will be suspicious of that, basically. So that's what's going on here. Then they highlight the idea of, like, this is where you can take the story in different directions. Rhea's the one ultimately behind the arsons going on by hiring someone, but they basically highlight that if you choose it to be the arsonist is from the restorationists, it's G, and if it's from the loyalist, it's Yiko. Makes sense. And stifled G, wanted to make it on his own. He failed, went to the Blue Sky Fisheries for a job, and Rhea preyed on his desperation, offering him easy money for torching the buildings. And the idea is basically both of them are just getting in over their heads, trying to make their way in the world is pretty much the idea. Yiko does it because he sees it as helping the Fire Nation cause, that, like, hey, this will help what my father wants, basically, even though it's going overboard, obviously, here. And so there's obviously going to be an investigation into that side of things, because you get the idea of, like, here's multiple ways to escalate the story. I'm always hesitant about, like, none of these things necessarily for sure happen. They could happen. The ending also, I feel, is a little bit hand-wavy in terms of, like, it is a broad issue topic, as we know from, like, The Promise. It can't be dealt with in a single session. You're not going to be able to bring peace to the town, like, just like that. And it's basically resolving the arson plot, maybe getting Rhea arrested, and then dealing with a broader conflict of, like, what to do with the fishing kind of villages and the fishery, basically. And then the way it begins, and this is where they give you the Harmony Restoration movement kind of, like, background situation here. So if you're not familiar with this, that's kind of what's going on here. It's the movement is basically an agreement to extract Fire Nation colonists from the Earth Kingdom, and you now kind of change the way that this was considered because it's so mixed. And this is an example of a place that's not quite as locked in as that, but you get the idea of what we're doing that with. So we get the idea here of that yes, how it starts off is effectively, the companions have been working in the region to help resolve major conflicts, and this is where the mayor basically kind of brings them in. How it properly, truly begins, your inciting incident, is you are met by the mayor, who ushers them to the docks, because she's late for her speech. And then basically, what is it? During the speech, the fire goes off. This is where the arsonist lights one of the Blue Sky Fisheries warehouses on fire, which is the detail from up here. Yeah, final part of the plan is during the festival, have an arsonist torch a Blue Sky Fisheries building. And so that's actually the opening act of like the game if you play it, obviously. And from there you get into the investigation and that whole kind of sort of thing effectively. And you'll explore, I suppose, the conflicts between the two groups. Probably at some point, get into investigating Rhea, and going from there. Then we just need to wrap this up with important locations overall. So yeah, Linsho, sleepy coastal town centered around the docks. It was a Fire Nation colony returned to the Earth Kingdom. It is a large fishing market, and they really emphasize that is the main thing. And then in complete contrast to Fishing Village, we also have that Rhea's 2-story mansion further inland is away from the stench of the town. And that's the whole idea there. We get the main locations are the fisheries itself. We've got the mayor's office, the docks and the fish market. There is a tea house here, of course, which they note here. It's run by Chen Lai's sister, Zi Ping. And this is where secret restorationist meetings happen. We also have Yo's home here. Now, some of the pictures that they include here, I believe these are pictures of the location from the waterbending scroll. I don't think this adventure is enough to confirm that exact location is Linsho, because they do this a lot where they will just use background kind of images, location images from the show that roughly resemble what these adventures are doing, but I don't think it's necessarily meant to be the same thing, because of course it's meant to be during the Aang era. So during the events of that episode, this place, Linsho, should be a Fire Nation colony. And while where they go to, I guess, is a harbor that accepts, Earth Kingdom and, Zuko's ship is allowed to dock, I'm not sure if you quite get the idea that it's a Fire Nation colony, but maybe it is, because that's the way we're meant to view it. It's hard to say if they're in any way trying to confirm that or not. I'm inclined to go with the idea that it doesn't feel like it's super obviously confirmed, but maybe it is. Maybe that's why they do it, but that's just that situation there. Then we get into the pre-generated characters, which are kind of covered here. I'll just actually go through them kind of like this, because they do give them the full paragraph kind of backstory here, which is interesting. They don't have images for these characters, and I suppose because this is the main quick start thing, the free one that's available to everyone, there might be a little bit more significance placed on them as a beginner way to kind of start it off. So we have Kalika, born in the Northern Water Tribe, wealthy female waterbender, expected to become a healer, didn't want to do that, had to kind of fight to kind of earn her position away from all of this stuff. Yeah, knowing how priceless it is, kind of, going down a different path, she'll fight tooth and nail for others to have the same rights, and she wants to help another member of the group, Chihiro, to break free from her family's past. Again, there's not too much of a really detailed connection here, really. It's just that the characters have a little bit of a built-in backstory. Ginkgo is the youngest child of a small, happy family in Omashu. Very much respects the Avatar. Went out to help in the world. but discovered that things aren't as idealistic as that people are angry across the world because of the war. Not everyone had a super happy childhood, and he wants to try and fix that. He has a turtle duck called Soup, which is kind of funny, and wants to make the world a better place. Ziyi the Guardian grew up in a town wasting to nothing after Fire Nation exploitation until her father died, and she fled to find a better life. Living in the wilderness, stealing to get by, she came to Linsho, embraced by its people, and she thought that she'd spend the rest of her days in peace until the Harmony Restoration movement proved that there was still much to do. And she's now friends with Ginkgo, and wants to protect him from himself. We have Toklo the Icon. Toklo spent his youth preparing to be his people's talekeeper, learning stories of his people as part of the Southern Water Tribe, and took a different path than the other men, of course, and yeah, eventually had to leave and fight. When the war was over, he returned home to find his village was gone, and he alone held the history of his lost people and keeping traditions alive. And then the final character, Chihiro, the successor, who was mentioned just before. Chihiro's parents were monsters, not just blinkered by propaganda, but gleeful and terrible participants in an unjust war. For all the atrocities they performed, they became wealthy and were gifted a swath of land in the Earth Kingdom. When the war ended, the first thing Chihiro did was quietly slip her parents some sleeping herbs, tie them up, and wait for the Earth Kingdom guards to come get them. Chihiro is not a monster. She's deeply ashamed of what her parents did in the war and will spend her entire life making up for it. So, some interesting ideas. Like, I think you would say, like, at least Chihiro and which character is it? Z are the ones who feel the most connected to the actual plot there, but there's not too much going on. So that I think mostly brings this to an end. I don't think there's as much to super get into with this one. It's cool enough that, like, I do appreciate them trying to make a story about, like, another colony, but I do wish there was a little bit more backstory on Linsho, a little bit more clarity about this, and in general I do think the RPG should make a better attempt at telling you where new locations actually are, rather than being really vague about it, especially if it's meant to be significant like this, another Fire Nation colony, that's your gimmick in a way for the story. You know, delve into it, I think, a little bit more. That's my kind of feedback on this one. Otherwise, it's a simple story, and maybe that's the point of it being the included adventure with the kind of basic starter guide, that it isn't overly complicated. Basically, if you've read The Promise, you have a really good foundation in probably what's going on here and can do this story quite well. So in the comments, let me know what your thoughts are on this adventure, Storm Over Linsho. But that has been the video. Thanks for watching, and bye.